There's some of it, but there's a farm right here. 326 people, and not much else. Dick, this is Dick Dean. This is the pump station on your property. You can still see it's got what, a 1913 date on it.
Right. Yeah.
Is that what it is? 1913. There were several of those. There was another one out on Peninsula Drive, and there used to be a big cistern right smack in the middle of the road. And you had drove around on one side and the other. I think it was 40, 50 feet across, filled the whole right of way. And there was a pump station then down on the south side of the lake there for that one. That's, again, it's gone. And if you don't get it and know something about it, some of you might remember Gladys Hall. My dad bought that house from the Hull family in 1930. But Gladys was born in 08, and she had a marvelous memory, but her vision was gone. And I would take pictures down and I would describe what the action was or some of the people in it that I knew and try and get her to say, who are these folks? But she gets so frustrated because her memory was good and her vision wasn't. And so this is some of the fun in this whole business is trying to find out who were these people and find out, hey, they're probably guys just about like you and I. And it would have been fun to know. But if you don't get it, it's gone. So, Sets, Lies, and Danny's Tavern. This is, and I've got to stop this each time because I've got this on a PowerPoint and it's gonna. This is that little white house here, or little house. Here is the whiteboard fence here. This is, we purchased it. My dad bought this in 1930, and then we built on to the end here, put a kitchen on it. But my mom, we bought a 9x12 rug, and when she tried to roll it out in the living room, it was too big. But because we had all this room, Brick and Hazel McFadden moved in with us during the war, and Dudley McLean's kids. So we were only, 10 of us living in that one-bedroom house. But it was just a different world. Everybody had to, I promised some of you I'd tell you how to cut cardboard to put in your shoes. Everybody had nothing. It was just fine. We didn't know we were poor. And, hey, people needed a place to stay. The base was building. People needed a place to stay. Brick McFadden, if you remember him, he drove a freight truck. And one time, accidentally, he dropped a case of pork and split the case. Of course, the Air Force wouldn't receive it. This was during the war. And so he brought it home, and my dad and him went down on the lake, and they cut big blocks of ice out of the lake, and they iced that pork, and then they salted it and treated it. And hey, that got us through the whole winter. So wonderful things happen. But this is that house on the corner at about that time. Did I get it to advance here? This then is. This picture is taken just about if you would have walked out of that house, out into the middle of Broadway. Danny's Tavern is right there. This is on the corner of Ash. This is a hotel that was built by the Grant Realty Company. The Grant Realty Company were Grunder Interest from Milwaukee. They bought the town site, in essence, did the planning. I'm a little rusty, but there were two people who owned almost everything. One was a man, a United States Senator from South Dakota named Pettigrew, and that name is still floats around out there in Cascade Valley. And the other one was Lord Thomas Blythe, and they owned every other section of everything. And if I'm not mistaken, one of those interests was bought by the Brunders, who were publishing and brewing interests in Milwaukee, and they platted the town. They put the little board sidewalks in, they built the hotel, they built Danny's Tavern. These other buildings, this is on the site of where the red rocking chair is. This building, that was a store. Notice the ladder leaning against here. I'll show you another picture that shows that ladder. So they must have came off of the same roll of film. This little building here is on the side of Griffin's Bakery, so you can get a little bit of perspective. The street is graded. Notice the traffic problem. The first caution light went in the 40s down there on Broadway and Alder. The hotel here, well, let me appreciate it when you ask questions. The whole thing that I've got will last about an hour.
Now, what time is it? What
That picture there,
What year?
that, let me stop. See the trees here? It's really fascinating. How do you date a photograph? And I can remember a dialogue about Lucy, the hominid, and there was an argument between Johansson, the guy who found it, and some other scientists saying, how old is it? And but the article that wrote it up said, problems of dating older women. And there's a real problem because what generally happens is we say that's older than we think. The hotel, it's Moslake Inn here. It used to say the Grand Hotel. The hotel burned on the 29th of April in 1939. The trees, and we'll see those pictures of that fire. The trees in the fire pictures are up about another story. This photograph is copied in a painting down at the senior center. I've seen it kick around. I'm not sure it's still on the wall, but there's a painting that duplicates this. Notice here the board sidewalk is now a path. There used to be no herd lawn, so the cattle and the pigs just beat the sidewalks up. And they're gone now. So I would say this picture is 1935. That's a pretty good wet figure picture. In 1939, the trees are about here. But
Harold,
yes,
what year were you born?
I was born in 37, in October 37.
Do you remember this as a child?
Oh yeah, I used to go down to Danny's Tavern. I don't remember the hotel.
Come on, pull your diaper or what?
Hey, let me tell you an awful story about the mayor and maybe some of you guys on the council, but we still own that restaurant, and we had to change those sidewalks. Remember that? And I got really out of shape. $5,400 to change the blasted color of the sidewalk. And so belatedly, I'm down there, and Harry Dan was running the meeting, and I'm griping to the council, but they had the promoter that did all this, kind of like 2020, and they had him in there, and he's greasing everybody up, and he's making a sale for these improvements and putting the pressure on, and he's got this dolled up picture of Danny's Tavern. He said, look at this, your whole community could look like Danny's Tavern, you know? And he's really hammering it. And it was attractive. It was an attractive picture. And finally, through all this, I get a chance to speak. And Harry Dan was running the meeting. And I got up and I said, hey, $5,400 to change the color of the sidewalk, blah, blah, blah. And he says, Mr. Hochstatter, he says, we decided this months ago, where were you? I said, I was at Danny's Tavern. Where else would you be? It cracked everybody up and I ended up paying the $5,400. So this picture, the previous one I think was about 1925, and I'm not even going to try and get back to that one. But I do appreciate the input. Barb Osmond's here. Where are you, Barb? I'm going to embarrass you. She corrected me right smack in the middle of my speech. And we had this, yeah, thank God, huh? We had this question about the railroad tracks across Alder Street. And I said, those are obviously, this picture is obvious. Now, we're getting to dating pictures. How do you tell the date of this thing? See the railroad tracks, they cross Alder Street, and that means that the picture was made either during the war or after the war when they extended the railroad tracks and built the little railroad bridge and took the railroad tracks out to the port, out to the base. And Barbara says, not so. She says, those have always been there. Well, I've got the 1917 Grant County Atlas, and I went home and checked that woman out. And she's right. And so you can learn a lot if you're not right. But you throw the information out there, and then somebody will say, hey, wait. And then you update things and go on. But it really is important to try and get the date right. I've got a book called The Spotter's Guide. What's a really good way to date photographs? Really good way. Yes?
Cars.
Cars. See? Now you can't, they all look alike. Back then they didn't. In this Spotter's Guide, it shows all these cars, and you can tell them by the date. You'll see a 27 Pontiac in here, and it's got two eccentric circles on the grill, is the emblem, and you can look that up and date that picture, so you know it's not any older than that car. But you see lots of pictures that somebody has wet finger dated way early. There was a famous movie where, in Roman times, where the guy has got some coins that got BC dates on them. Figure that one. But it's really important to try and get them close, but if I don't know, then I'll put a question mark or something, just to tell everybody, I don't know. It's a wet finger guess at the date, but the dates really do help. And the cars are an excellent way to date something. You know, there's a 26 Ford in there, you know it didn't take it.
Circa works too.
Pardon me?
CIRCA works. CIRCA on the
You're
photograph.
so official, Ethel Marie. That's a question mark for those who are smarter than I. There we go. But a lot of these pictures, fortunately, are just like you stepped out of that little restaurant and then looked down Broadway. Go. This is then, notice the trees. Have you talked about that? Notice the trees. They're about here. That other picture, they're about here. The 29th of April, 1939. This is, it was a 50-room hotel. My parents lived here when they were first married. But it caught fire. Lorne Harris was the owner. Lorne came to Ephrata in about 1909. His wife, Margaret, was the Grant County treasurer for a lot of years. Lorne was our postmaster. In 1958, he delivered a very interesting speech to the Lions Club. It's about, 19, 20 pages. That is a very accurate history of that period. And if you're interested in this, I can get you the 19th page, and I think the library has it. But it's one of the very, very best. The museum. Why did I leave you out? Okay. You can get it here at the museum. Lorne Harris's history. But he was sick. They hauled him out on a mattress. But the thing burned completely to the ground. What do they say? The firemen saved the lot.
What started the fire?
What's that?
How did the fire?
I don't know, Ethel Marie.
And please don't-
But you know, throughout the West, those towns were all built out of wood, and they burned, you know. A lot of those towns, Seattle had a fire, Spokane, a lot of those towns, major cities had a fire, big fire. They stopped that. What was the car? It was a 36 Ford. It's gone. You want to risk this? We're going to go back in time now. That didn't help, did it? We probably never seen anything like this. I'm not going to risk this. Teacher. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Don't expect a refund. Thank you. Yeah, this I call drinks around the house. They're fighting the fire. This is across the street. I used to think this was Danny's Tavern. It's not. This is the bar shop. That is Danny's Tavern. Whoops. Gotta stop that. I don't think it sees me. Danny's Tavern is over here. This is just down the street. And it's a problem with it doesn't seem to care, does it? Oh, I'm shooting at the wrong machine.
There you go.
That hurt? Yeah, you just missed about all my speed. There's that ladder again. There. Pull the pin. Oh, you said that last time. Okay. No, these guys went out of here. They're ready now. This picture was taken, Clyde was talking about what a marvelous air base. I mean, it was awful. Well, the town, you imagine being assigned to Moses Lake. This picture was taken by a serviceman who came to Moses Lake. And this is, we roared by a couple of the buildings, but this was the store. This was the Leland and Rudloff store. And if you notice here, now there's an A card on that, which means this is during the war. Well, we know that because it came from a guy. He moved to Philadelphia and was in the photography business. He sent this picture to the mayor, I think, and the mayor sent it to the museum, and the museum called me and says, what is this? Well, that is that Leland and Rudloff store. When the Brunders did the plat, there was a big battle with Ham, Ryrie, and Yearsley, who was an engineering firm that had a claim to all the water. And so the plat didn't go. And so they decided, hey, let's cut and run. So they had a big sale, they posted the town with sale posters. In the morning of the sale, there was other posters that says you can buy the land, but you can't use the water. We own it all. Hammer already used it, and it killed the sale. I mean, in this country, no water, go figure. So, the town really languished, but there are at least four really important people. Leland and Rudloff bought all the lots. They bought the town in essence. The Hulls, Ed Hull, who was the name, Gladys Hull, he was my first principal. He gave me hell for taking a snowball to the grade school. But I had it coming. He had all of that land as you go up Pioneer Way, the mortuary on the one side, and on the other side is kind of grass now, but it used to be grazed in there. It was really a pretty piece of ground when you entered the town. And Leland and Rudloff bought the lots, Hull bought the water system, Penloric bought Ed Penloric, or was it Penhalic? I can't remember. There was a war between them. They were all the same family. Somebody changed their name. But he ended up with the phone system. And the town languished for 20, 30 years. This picture, it was a store. It was the Leland. But they cut the hole in there, put a projector in there, and that became the theater. And we had one projector. If you remember when you watch movies, there's a little spot up in the corner, bip, and that means, hey, change the projector? What do you mean change the projector? We only got one. So you turn the lights on, the light on, it hung from the ceiling by 2 wires. Light on, everybody shot the bull, and you rewound it, and you put another roll on, and you begin. It's like having commercials. I mean, very modern. And that's the way I saw Snow White and Frankenstein and Lassie and a whole lot of those movies, one reel at a time. And it was just fine. It's just the way it was. So these people, it looks like they're at a store. What's it, dry goods, shoes, no shoes? All right, what's a no shoe? What? Sewing. All right. How did you know that? Furnishing, say what, and they had put that stuff on there, but it was the theater, as I remember it, and the first theater, and that was right. Well, that's that red chair building, and so it was right over here. It was, for a while, the cash store owned by
McCosh.
Ed McCosh. Thank you. Who's so sharp back then? Why don't you write your own show? It's getting tougher for me. McCosh, he was the second mayor. The first mayor, and I don't think I brought it, but I got a ballot where they began to change the name. Moses Lake was up on Nepel, or up on Nelson Road, I'll get it right. Up on Nelson Road, and all 3 of the buildings are still there. There's a hotel, and there's that funny little house that looked like it had 2 chimneys to the north of it, and then a really nice looking house that's the old Ewald place. It's been remodeled. But those 3 buildings constituted Moses Lake. In 1934, in the Depression, they began to cut out post offices. And there's Nepel and there's Moses Lake. And they said, what's the point of that? So they closed Moses Lake in 34. And that started the wheels moving to change the name, because the lake was Moses Lake, to change the name of the town to Moses Lake. It took a long time. They voted to do it. Then they voted the leadership. My dad was elected to city council. Eric Peterson was the first mayor. And then, I'm not sure of the order. No, the post office changed first. Then the election to change the name. Then the election of the officials. Finally, the railroad and the school district. I think the school district was still sending out Nepel post office. What do you get when you're all right, I'm glad you guys are sitting up.
Harold?
Yes.
Weren't the Campbell sisters the postmistresses up on the
Where's
hill?
what?
The Campbell sisters?
No, you're
Weren't
thinking
they
McDonald's.
McDonald sisters?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're thinking of the McDonald's, and Miss Jessie, I'll come to that picture, I may be getting a little out of sequence here, but they were up there in Moses Lake. This was Nepel. That is '59 Chevy, I think. But I can identify from the front. Is that right? I only want truth information. Get it right. So did I stop? This is, again, take a little further down the street. There's that building. This is Ash Street. Now notice the hotel's gone. This was probably taken during the war, I'm guessing. Again, looking at the cars. This is Ralph's Grocery. Ralph Davis, he lived kind of back there behind the used car lot there, Russ's Used Cars, and that house set back some distance. That house has been moved out. It was pink, I'm not sure, but it's been moved out past the starch plant, out on East I-90, and it's been built on, but it's got a really neat kind of paneled ceiling in one room. It was really probably the nicest home in the whole town, and that was Ralph Davis's place, and they lived here for a long time. I've got his regulator clock in my living room, but it doesn't regulate anymore. I interfered with it. Time stood still. But Danny's Tavern, and Danny's Tavern, it only became Danny's Tavern like in the '60s when Danny Hoplack bought it. What it was known to most of us as the pool hall. And I would go down there and buy Tootsie Rolls, hey, big as my little finger is now, for a penny. Can't buy anything for a penny. But I lived there and listen to the sound of the pool balls and buy candy. There wasn't any place else to buy anything. There wasn't, we had the grocery store, we had the cash store. And McCosh was in the process of expanding that. But again, you can see it's, I think that's paved now. They brought the first highway in about 1935, in from Burke and out to the George Way. And there was always a big battle to get the road. You know, where does the road go? And in that case, they had surveyed it to the south, and they, our people in the town, we had a commercial club, and they went down there and says, you moved the states. And they called up, and there's a big row, and they got the road moved up here. Otherwise, it would have bypassed, Rose Lake would have went north of Othello and then down past Warwick. Hey, that meant all of the difference. Well, like the railroad. The railroad was in the town. It made a big deal out of it. Adrian was in the competition to become the county seat. I ain't anything out there now but Donnie Merrill. But hey, they had a big railroad terminal out there. And it was quite a thing, Adrian was. And a lot of competition in those days for any of those kinds of things, because they didn't know what towns were going to survive, because a lot of those towns were named by the railroad. They're jerkwater towns. You know what a jerkwater town is? That's 20 miles. You can go that far, and then you have to jerk water. You pull the spout down, you water the train. And as the diesels came in, you could go farther. And as the Model T came in, now why go to Roof? Honestly, when you go to Nepal, right downtown Nepal, get to Fort, and soon it's only 20 miles. And so those towns begin to go away. And I've got some more. Let's see where I am.
Where was Miller's store?
Pardon me?
Miller's.
Ethel Marie, I'm gonna have, there's that funny. Who?
Miller's store.
Miller.
Miller. And they had a little dry goods store there.
Taylor did.
Maybe it was
Taylor.
It could have been Taylor.
Taylor was down on the corner of 3rd. There's a pizza place in there now. Is it Papa Murphy's or something?
Right.
That's where Taylor was. Yeah, I promised you also stories for these hard times. One of our most famous citizens, Joe Hooper, and I, we were down, of course, at Danny's Tavern. I mean, you had about 2 places to go, trying to get coins on the board sidewalk. And you know, the whole thing is, you put the gum on the end of it. Well, hey, it doesn't work. It's like a lot of economic stuff we hear today. It doesn't work. But we're out there crawling along the board sidewalk in front of Danny's, and there was a bench there where our most prominent citizens sat. And we watched this for an hour or so. And finally, one of them says he can't get coins out of the board sidewalk with gum on a stick. And he says, take your pocket knife, and all kids had a pocket knife in those days, you could have a pocket knife and not get this expelled. Split the stick with a pocket knife. Take a green willow stick and split the stick with a pocket knife. And then you take it and you just, when you come across a coin, you dig a little hole and you set the coin up like this, and then you push the stick, split the stick over, out it comes. Now, I don't know if you're still employed, but if you are, good. If you're not, we made 92 cents in one afternoon. I'm mostly out at Taylor's Friendly Store. But people don't get so friendly when you're out there crawling along the sidewalk. Your nose all skinned up. Joe Hooper was an old buddy of mine. He's 2 years younger than I am. Joe Hooper is the most decorated serviceman in any war for this country. He and I thought that one of us was going to be a hero. Turned out to be him. My mom had these old silver maples way up there, and I would climb up there and I could reach around that like that, and you could see his initials up there, higher than I could reach. But Joe had the Congressional Medal of Honor and was offered a second one. He did uncommon things just because he needed to. And he's been dead now since the 70s, but that's another story. Interesting. This is that 27 Pontiac, and in a good shot, you can actually read the license, the date on the license number. That's that concentric circles. The board sidewalks were put in here. A guy named Grunder managed all this. F.W. Nagel managed the interest for the Grunder family. And the rumor was that these little narrow board sidewalks, they were kept narrow so that his French wife would have to walk behind him. Here's Danny's Tavern. You get an idea. This is Griffin's Bakery. Are you getting oriented? Griffin's Bakery, that's Germania Street. A lot of Germans in town from Germania Street. And it became division then after the war. But I don't know who the gentleman is. That's one of the other things, fun things with old photos. The action's in the background. You know, who cares? Somebody must care who this gentleman is. He's pretty proud of that Pontiac. But the stuff in the background is really very interesting. Charles Chamberlain gave me a bunch of shots, and we'll get to some of them, of the parade in 1946. And he didn't just, he was up on top of that furniture store, the old cash store building. He's up on top of that. But as luck would have it, he didn't just shoot everything that came in front of him. He panned up and down the street. And so I got all these old photos that pretty much cover that whole part of the street. Back on Germania, this is my Uncle Chris. There's the store that became the theater, the hotel, and guess what? Danny's Tavern. But they're grading Germania Street as if it needed it. But if you get tired of seeing the same old buildings, you're not going to see any others. That's it. The guy that sent that photo, the serviceman that sent the photo of the theater, after he gave it to the city, I got real jealous. I wanted the real image. And so I wrote to him. And I said, boy, I really prize that. That means a lot to me. And he says, if I had known how interested you were, he says, I would have documented the whole town. It would have took a half a roll of film. So, yeah, you can tell he was stationed here. But thankfully somebody took some shots. And then the other thing is thankfully somebody recognized him. This is a Gordon Everett photo. Gordon was again one of our mayors. His wife Juanita was my 4th grade teacher. This is down. We're standing about in front of the bakery right here. And we're looking. There's that infamous thing. I don't know if that's photo safe or not, Mayor. Do you know? That was the light in Grant County, I think, and it just flashed. This building, see how this was taken in '48, and they used to line the Harleys and the Indians up like that, push them up against the curb, and for a kid 10 years old to go and see those big, beautiful machinery But this is a CAP meeting, and that's the symbol there. And I think they're meeting in this restaurant here. This building was initially the phone exchange, and then it later moved down about across from the used car lot down there, Russ's Used Cars. Dirt road, that was the main drag, that was US 35 and then Highway 10, Washington 35, and then Highway 10, and finally US 90. This is the Hochstatter hardware and the garage. My great uncle had the hardware, and my dad had the garage. And this is on the parking lot there at Youth Dynamics. If you know, we're just down from the bakery. They lived upstairs, two bachelors. My great uncle George was born in '98, and my dad in '03. They were 5 years apart. Those big German families. There was 13 kids in my dad's family, and they were some of the nephews were older than the uncles were. They just kept having kids. But this building was in Wheeler. Remember we talked about how the towns died, and so they just picked the buildings up and moved them. And this one was a guy by the name of Edgar Dry owned that. And if you look in that 1917 atlas, it says Dry Hardware. And you think, well, it's like dry goods or something. But his name was Edgar Dry. In that history of Warren Harris, he talks about having moved to Walla Walla, and the area began to flourish in the 20s. And he said, the dry hardware store has been moved to Nepal. And I just read over that, not realizing he's talking about Edgar Dry's store. But Don Beckley was related to Edgar Dry. He said when they moved this thing, big building to move in the 20s, they took a handsaw and they got between two joists and they just sawed it in two. Down up one side and across the roof, and then they moved the two halves and put it back together. They were innovative. Very, very much simpler life. This again is the J.W. Lang building coming from Route, and they are almost at Broadway and Alder. Alder goes off, or Stratford Road goes off this way, and this is a Mack truck. And this guy's up the pole moving the wires so he can get underneath. But this was moved in on that same lot where the furniture store is with the red rocking chair. And Drew Cruikshank had a hardware, the Columbia Basin Hardware. I don't know if any of you remember that, but I bought a shotgun from him with a little 25-20 rifle, which I still have. And he was an interesting gentleman. I bought a banjo that had a guitar neck, and I gave it to Charlie Ruth. Ruth, you know Charlie, the old time fillers? Interesting instrument. I never could get a sound out of it. It didn't make any sense. But Drew Cruikshank, his wife was a band vet, but they moved that building from Ruth. I was at a play at the Opera House in Spokane, and just talking to the gal sitting next to me, and she says, I had people that were in that town, Lang. I said, really? And of course, my open-faced attitude, I says, give me your address, you know? That's when her husband punched me. But I said that picture, I said, I know, but I know when that was 1931. And that's helpful too. You get dates that are firm dates, and you can tell. And I think I'd like to go down and read the city archives. You see, like building permits and stuff, that would maybe give you firm dates for a lot of that stuff. But I've got a picture of this building sitting in roof, and that's a striped awning, and you could see just about that much, just enough to tell that it is this building. I'm not sure that it's in this. I should either bring it or shut up, but I'm not sure what's on this. But I've got hundreds of these photos. This is about 60 of the best. And this is again is my Uncle Chris. There's the substation. When they brought power down here, they brought power, Washington Water Power brought power down Stratford Road across the fill. Here's the fill right here. past the depot, and the substation was right there on the corner where Greg Hill's got his office. There's a payday, of course you can't identify anything with a payday loan, there's one on every corner. But that was there and taken out in 1948. So again, when you see that, you know, hey, that was 1948 that this is taken way before that. When the water is low, these docks were built by the Brunders as just a promotion deal. Now, when the water gets, in another couple of months, when the lake gets real low, you can go down there by that Mexican restaurant, Danny's Tavern, right up here, and you can see the ponds, but I've got a photograph of these ponds, but they're right on the shoreline. And the reason for that is they brought a second railroad track down during the war. They brought a second railroad track that went on out to the air base. If you go down to about Michael's on the Lake, you can see the jog in the track where they took the old original track out and kept the later one, which was filled in. In those days, hey, you just filled it. Now it takes enough permits to make the fill. But in those days, you just did it. And the railroad was notorious for just doing everything with their own business. This is the railroad station. Remember the fuss about another Vision 2020 store? It blocked somebody's vision. Whose? Harry Danos. He was the head of one of these, and I'm going to tell stories out of school because Garden and who's the young guy? Brian. We're in the room and told me this, but he was the head of this thing, the same guy that changed the color of the sidewalks, but his office is right here. And what's in his view? The railroad station. So if you remember, one day, that sucker's gone. They're out there tearing it down. And some of us would have made a big fuss, wouldn't we, Dick? Like we did about Central School? Yeah. Too late. Too late. I guess it takes a lawyer to know how to get things done. But poof, it's gone. Hey, good, bad, that's just the way it is. But sometimes the story about what happened, behind what happened, is often interesting.
The permit was given Friday night, and they had it out of there by Sunday afternoon.
Oh, all right. Chris was born in '04. He was my dad's second brother. A little closer to the railroads. You can see the two tracks here, and it says Rappel here. This poplar tree, that's another thing that's helpful. When I was in ROTC, there was a class on how to read aerial photographs. And one of the very most useful things is shadows. Because they're hard to camouflage. And they tell you the height of things. And so, here, this tree is helpful to kind of date things. But I would say this is probably still taken, I'm guessing, during the war, but takes the railroad a while to get around things. This is an Ellis photo. Ellis traveled eastern Washington at least and took clouds of photos of little towns. And there's a guy, help me here. Who's the guy? $64,000.
You know the one? That one? That guy?
Yeah, that guy he's a collector of these photos. They're very, very gracious. Cooper, he drives a Mini Cooper. There we go. John Cooper, and he lives in Bellevue, but he collects Ellis photos. And he's very, very generous to let you have them. I don't care for the postcard. I want the image. And so I says, run them through the copy machine and send them. He sent me everything he had of Moses or of Rappel. But again, this is the Youth Dynamics parking lot. The bakery's right here, Hochstatter Electric. Here, my dad did auto mechanics, did all kinds of things. In those days, if you were a mechanic, you did everything. It's like being a blacksmith. And he started doing auto mechanics. They came to this country out in Lloyd here, out on Road 12 in 1902. They left Russia. That's a whole other story. And if you come to the thing that Mick Qualls does, that's one more really good speech that he does. He's not even Russian German. I am, and he's not. Well, I'm half. My mom was a regular, just came from Germany. And when my mom and dad would fight, my mom would say, "You Russian?" You were no more Russian than I was, but that's a whole interesting story of how Catherine the Great invited those German beer-drinking Lutherans from Plowridge to go raise wheat in the Ukraine. And that's why we got a town called Odessa. You know, what's that doing here? And those German nationals they came about the time of our revolution and they got out of there, many of them got out. I've got an aunt that died in Siberia, but she didn't get out. After the revolution, it got really ugly. This is an Ellis photo. They scrubbed the Ellis off, and it's really a rotten one. I need to get a better copy of this. Again, Alder Street going off here. The Goodwin building is not built yet. Yeah, I need to get a better image. That is awful. But 41 Dodge. And this is a military vehicle. So it must be about Rexall Drug. That's Homer Fultz. Yes.
Is that in Pell, or is Moses?
That's Moses Lake.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Moses Lake. And it was
When did it change?
changed incrementally from 38, 39, the post office first, and finally by 42, I think everybody was calling me. Yeah, that thing was worse than here. My dad had a contract, and they would park the county truck. It had a big snow blade on it, and every morning they'd open that big door and run it out and park it on the street. But in the winters, they'd take it down on the ice and clear the ice off so we could skate. I mean, you do it now, you'd be under the jailhouse, driving that 2-ton truck around and nobody, would clean the ice off. This is again, okay, the substation, 1948. This is Alder Street going down over the hill. And not many, I don't have many photos from that particular angle.
That
Again,
was
they
a
really,
restaurant.
pardon me?
That was a.
Yeah, that was the Morris's Cafe. And I think that's another shot, you can see it better. This is later. This is a 52 Mercury. Ah, cut it out. Boy, I'd like to go back. Let me try and get that. Let me see if I can get back there. I should have pre-functioned, shouldn't I? Yeah. I'm gonna stop that. No, I'm gonna own that next shot. But that photo, oh, now look what I've done. You're gonna have to see the whole thing all over. That photo was taken from the top of the old hardware. And so it was probably some of my people. Yes?
So in that early picture, the fill is already there.
The fill was put, I'm not sure when the fill is. Like I said, I've got that 1917 atlas, and it's in there then. And so I don't know when the fill. The county was formed in 1909. You know, we just had our centennial on the county. And the city was platted 11, 12, 13, in there. I've looked at the old copies of the Grand County Journal, and it's fascinating because of this guy Nagel. See, nobody knows who Napel was or where that came from. And what's Napel? It might be that you can get back into the Brunder family, and maybe we find old Aunt Napel, we don't know. But who was Napel? I get that asked all the time. I haven't in August. But there is conjecture about Nagel, because there was Nagel Acres down here just on Division there, where you get in that low spot right by the end of the lake there. That was at Nagel Acres. And then there was a town site, a platted town site, out where the chicken farm is, on the railroad out, called Nagel. Thank you. But this is, like I say, 52 Merck, so this is kind of out of my period of interest is 1950 and early. Again, Alder Street, this is the rodeo parade. Used to have it in bright broad daylight. And well, I'll get to those other photos, but they had everything imaginable in that parade. You know, they didn't have much to show off, but we did it. I've seen another photo of the same scene, but you could see the people that took that picture sitting on the building, on the roof. This is my Uncle Ben, And Ronnie, he was born in 13, he was born in 17, that's a bunch of bullheads. One of the previous, on the 15th, there was another talk here by a guy that was interested in the fishery. And I've got some stuff, and it's primarily out of that history of Lauren Harris, about who put bullheads in here and the crappies and all. I don't know who takes the credit for the carp. But it's kind of interesting to know those dates. But this picture for years hung in the restaurant out there where El Papagayos is now, or I don't know what they call that restaurant, the bowling alley. But he took a bunch of my old family shots back in the old 70s and had them in there. This is one where you can really tell if you crop a picture, it gets a lot better. Yeah, Ben is barefoot. This is the fairgrounds, and this building is in back there, just behind Rite Aid. Rite Aid's about here. And this is the Grant County Fair. Another thing, let me gripe to you. I had the program from the 1945 rodeo, and Tub Hansen was the ringmaster, and all these famous guys, and they wanted it for the Grant County Fair. And I loaned that to our fair commissioners, and when the fair was over, dropped it in the garbage. And that kind of stuff, you know, you find yourself being real cheap with stuff, but it's only here because somebody was too lazy to destroy or had a particular interest. And that kind of stuff is kind of tough. If you saw Amadeus, remember that, how it ends? He dies, she's at Walmart or something, she comes home, they're throwing these bodies in the trench. He's 35 years old, throwing lime on them, and they don't even know where he's buried. You know, and this historical stuff. I went back to South Dakota to a family reunion. They had a whole stack of photos, and there was like 5 of these brothers, and one of them came west. And I was digging through these pictures. All of a sudden, I would come across a whole wedge of pictures. I knew every one of them. And these people were real, oh, you know these people? See, they were of this guy and his family who came west. And so the joy of this whole thing is to make discoveries like that. It's like finding an old stamp or an old coin or anything, and it's like, aha, you know, I know who that is. I can tell you something specific. We can chalk a date on that. So, Fairground, 1931. Russ and Golden Hansen were married at the fair, and they contributed the land where the golf course is, the Mosley Golf Course, Little Rock, and this guy got me up in the middle of the night, gave me a job out there putting them up. First, I find out just tonight he had a better job. He would have done it himself. But I helped break that golf course out of the sagebrush. And I had a black Jimmy Dean Mercury, and I got $1.25 to go out there and change the water from midnight to 1. And you know I was in the sack at midnight, but I'd have a load of people in that Mercury screaming up and down the fairways and get my $1.25 to change the water. But in that summer, I worked for $1.25 later, $1.50 an hour. I worked 70 hours, and I made enough money for a little box side-by-side 410 shotgun and a year's college. The kid can't make enough for a year's college now, working 2 summers or maybe a half dozen. A real different world. But it was that was an interesting experience. Dick, thank you for rolling me out. We had a reunion of all of those of us who didn't get canned right away. Well, I think we can come up here and help me.
You want me to do that?
No. This is some of those Charles Chamberlain pictures from the parade. Like I say, you put anything in there. If you had something that ran, you run in the parade. Sometimes they put school buses, anything. This is a spud rare. Notice the GI trucks. Here's where the hotel sat. Now it's the Mose Lake. That's still the Mose Lake Inn. Later it became the Hub Tavern, and that happened in 48 again. And you can take the old. I've got all of the Tyee annuals from 1942 through 1956. And so you go through the ads and you can tell what came and went. I've also got the Pope's directories from 1953 to the end, till last year. And I got those from the title company. I see them on the wall, and I was in there once, they're gone. And I said, where are they? Well, there are a couple of dozen boxes. don't want them. So they just get them out of here. But it's really, I wrote a thank you note to Janet Welch, and I says, now I know that Bob, Evil Knievel, used to sell Hondas here. And I had a bunch of little details that I gleaned out of that 1953 book. All of that stuff, it falls into the hands of somebody who will keep it. And it's really, and then like these photos that you're identifying here for helping Hildebrand. And
Bill and Hildebrand.
yeah, Bill Hildebrand, and also, well, you see how tough this is? Louis Leninger. Some of you might have Louis Leninger. Yeah, well, might have Louis Leninger photos in your office or stuff. He had a knack for composing landscapes and stuff. He did beautiful work, and they're all over this town. But he's moved to Wenatchee. I'd like to get together. Here's the little barber shop that they were throwing the water on when this burned across the street here. And Danny's Tavern, no sign at all. Model A, 36 and 44s. Getting hot in here, isn't it? Is it just me?
Harold,
Yes.
are you sure that that last picture is what you said it was? Because I thought Johnny Johnson's barbershop was
That wasn't
next.
Johnny Johnson. That was Bennett's barbershop.
Okay, but I knew it as Johnny Johnson.
Okay.
But look at the front of those two buildings.
Well, now I
Oh, you
have
can't
to
get
go
back to it.
there, Your Honor, and I can't.
That's all right, never mind, never mind.
I remember, I got my hair cut back when I had hair. There. And he put a board across there, and you get up on there, and you get dizzy, you look down at the cuspidor, and he cut your hair for a quarter. But it was, Bennett had that. Now, there was a guy, Chris, remember Chris's barber shop? And that was down, again, just beyond Hochstatter's Electric.
Yeah, right.
That was Chris's barber shop. And I remember, I think it was Chris Christian, he had the guitars hanging on the wall. Yeah, there was that. The other one that was right here was the old Ireland was the guy, the barber there earlier on. This Cadillac, Monsieur Waldron, the governor, is in that Cadillac. Again, the picture. How do you date the picture? This the Kirkish building is there. But on the other end, this is where the theater was. That store. And see, we're up on top of the roof of that big rocking chair store, the cash store. Cautious. But this, on the far end of town, we'll get to it, there's a banner across the street, and it says, Grant County Fair, September such and such, 7th and 8th, or something like that. Well, see, you get the phone book out, you look, what year was that weekend? And so you can date it. So, it's really important to at least get a few dates right, you know, and then you can hang things on that, and then be open for correction. Your Honor, I appreciate you, even though you're wrong, I appreciate you anyway. But notice, hey, concrete, one of those, and I got the picture, I got a gorgeous picture of most of these so-called floats. They formed up down at the housing. And I took this one, it's phone number on the truck. It's one of those big concrete trucks, GI truck, tactical tires on it. And I took it down by whatever, and give it to him, and he says, I used to have 2 of those. Side by side in the yard at the end of New York, the fire department was down there shooting a bull. And Al said, 2 trucks got the same license number. Little economy there, bought one plate, and stuck one on each rig, you know, and you're never gonna see them coming and going, but they never be together. But Frank had the phone exchange was just down from Lakefront Bar in the house there, and you know where his place is, down there behind Monty's, and he had no phone, as very few people did, but the gal would go down and tell him to answer the phone. She'd drive down, charge him 50 cents to go down to answer the phone. Frank had that picture in his office for years, and this is Neil Wyman. Dick knows Neil Wyman. And this, again, Danny's Tavern right here, so we're looking, coming out through the weeds there to the lake back here. But this is that series of the parade. Charles Chamberlain taught school here, taught photography, and it was in the war, and then he got out and went back and taught. I think he finished here, didn't he, Dick, or did he die before he retired?
I don't recall.
No, he died after he retired.
Ethel Marie would know those things. This is Morning Sun Dairy. You know where the Spanish church is out on the peninsula? That was Morning Sun, the Wilmot brothers, with a whole family. They had the dairy here, and this is again right across from the furniture store. They had the dairy here, and then they closed the dairy here, and they built that building out on the peninsula. It's out on the peninsula in Burris about. And they ran a dairy there for a few years. But they were so unwise as to hide their ice cream in the Western Cold Storage right under our nose. And we would go in there and raid their ice cream.
The library was located there for a while.
The library, right on, Ethel Marie, thank you. The library was, this is the women's club. And it was initially a cheese factory. They put the pump station in here. They're gonna irrigate all of this, big plans. Irrigate all of this, bring some farmers in there, dairy farmers in there, they're gonna milk the cows. They make cheese in this building. And none of that happened. It cost a fortune to pump the water on the lake. They couldn't get anybody to come out here to raise cattle in the desert. And so this became really the social center of the town. And I can remember going to birthday parties and Christmas parties there. The library was there. The women's club met there. And the doors were like a foot thick and had those big, heavy cast iron handles on them for a cold room. But I meant to bring that to Armistice Day or Veterans Day coming up, but there was a deal here that had all the names of the Grant County or Lady Compel folks that were in the war. I don't know what happened to that memorial, but it was there as long as that building was probably taken out in the 60s. But again, this is handy here where you've got a lot of Dad's Fountain, Wetzel's Grocery. I'm not sure what that is. That's that bank building or that Williams Restaurant. Here goes the governor. And this is that cash store building. So this is, again, 1946. This is the original built bridge out at I-90, out between the state park. And it's put together. I just tried to show you what it looked like. Notice the guy just up and stops. He's not going. That car's still sitting there. But like this, and the contractor, I can't remember what he paid, but they paid him, the county paid him to build that. And he got his money and left, and fortunately he didn't cross on the bridge, because right away it started doing this, because he didn't drive the poles in bridge. And so right away, they had to cut them off. They left it some open here so they could get through. And then they cut them off and then put the cribbing in there and fill that up with dirt so that you could get across. But they didn't get washed out. They suffered some. I've got a couple of shots of I've got some really neat footage from 1941 or stills on this. Shame on me. I hate to tell you, it's like going to the radio station and showing photographs. But I've got, maybe I need to do another speech if you all come back, but that shows the dam went out down in the south end. It's just in sand anyway, and it went out, and as it went out, then it began to wash it faster and faster. It opened up a big gap there. And people came out on the I-90 bridge, and it shows them dropping this bridge timber into that current, and it's just roaring through there like a mill race. They're trying to save the water. This was before the irrigation. The only water they had was in the lake, and a lot of the farmers pumped out of the lake, and if it dropped a couple feet, the suction wouldn't reach the water. And you were SOL. So they're out there trying to save it. It shows them throwing a backstop over there. I'm an anti-John. I appreciate that, but real fast. And this is the low fill. Then they cut the posts off and they filled it. You see the fill there, where it's the fill is almost at the lake level. Hallmark Inn is right here. But they left this and then you went up, whoop-de-doo, you went up and over. We're in, the park. We're in the state park, and my wife and I walk out to the bridge from Hallmark Inn side. And you can see there's the little hump where you go, you could see we're right at just almost at the water level. And then these are the pilings from the pile bridge, and they just filled in. The sand dunes out here in the park is in there. Here's boards. 40s, these poles here carried the power all the way across the lake in one pass. And the Hallmark Inn is here. That's Hochstatter Electric now. Those are those fuzzy maples that Joe Hoop used to put his name way up in there. But you see, there isn't anything else. When we moved out there in 47, bus 7 was a little Ford bus, 40-passenger bus, took up the whole peninsula. There wasn't any peninsula school, there wasn't that new school. They got everybody. Or, not anybody, it wasn't anybody. How fast it grew that. I'm just gonna let this run. This is just beyond my place, on Marina Drive. This is, Leroy Johnson. This house is still there right behind, OK Tire. This, Ross Sterling's got his trains in this house. His that's a story. He's got his, no, not away. He's, if you know Ross, he's got all these electric trains that can't. The gal that comes in here on holidays and paints all the store windows and all that neat stuff and does it during the fair, well, she painted a mural